In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the Cerberus are described as multi-headed hounds that patrol the Tartix River, usually on the mortal side where they slay any foolish enough to try and enter the underworld. They sometimes get lured away or captured for use as guards, as their endless hunger for mortal flesh makes them the perfect guard dogs. They come in two different varieties, the lesser two-headed Cerberus and the three-headed Underworld Cerberus that dwells deep within the underworld, protecting its portals from mortals and preventing the escape of tormented souls. For this minute mythology, we're going to focus on the second one. The Underworld Cerberus is definitely more fearsome and instantly recognizable by players. It's described as a large monstrosity with AC 16 and 104 hit points. It can move 60 feet per turn and has great stats across the board, including a 10 in intellect, which is unusually high for an otherwise beastly creature. It boasts a +7 to athletics, a +9 to perception, and a +4 to stealth, making it a fast, sneaky, and perceptive creature, perfect for the guard duty to which it's assigned. It's immune to fire and necrotic damage, as well as the blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, or stunned conditions, and also it cannot be exhausted. It has true sight up to 30 feet, meaning that illusions and invisibility will not affect it, and it has a passive perception of 19, making stealth incredibly difficult in all situations. Like the two-headed Cerberus, they can use a bonus action to move their full movement towards a hostile creature that they can see. They also cannot be surprised and rely on pack tactics to gain advantage on strikes when an ally is within 5 feet of their target. The Underworld Cerberus makes either 3 bite attacks or a breath attack. The bites all have a +7 to hit and each deal 2d6 + 4 piercing damage and 1d6 fire damage. This is a scale of 7 to 22 per bite and a total output of 21 to 66 damage if all 3 hit. The breath attack is a 30-foot cone, forcing a DC 15 dex save, with those failing taking 66 fire damage. Also on a failure, creatures are restrained, requiring a DC 15 athletics check to break free on their turn. This molten rock has an AC of 17 and 20 hit points, and is immune to fire, poison, and psychic damage. Like the weaker variant, the strategy with the Underworld Cerberus is fairly similar. With such a high perception and movement, the Underworld Cerberus is the perfect guard dog, and having several of them facing down a party makes them incredibly dangerous. As with the weaker variant, pack tactics indicates that the Underworld Cerberus is meant to fight in a group. I would have at least one of the Cerberus opening combat with a breath attack, and since the cone is double the size of its weaker version, it might be a good idea for all of the Cerberus in the pack to douse the party in breath attacks as their opening move. If they force players to make multiple dex saves, the chance that the players will fail and get restrained increases, and a breath attack on someone already restrained will likely result in another failure, dealing a lot of damage. After this initial wave of breath attacks, the strategy is similar to the weaker two-headed Cerberus. I would tap one of my Cerberus to be the variable attacker, that switches between targets, gaining advantage and splitting multi-attacks between at least 2 to 3 targets. The other Cerberus should either surround one player and beat them down together, or split apart to attack multiple targets at once. With a move speed of 60 and a bonus action to move an additional 60 feet, very few ranged players will be able to keep out of the Cerberus' reach. And should any ranged players get beyond 120 feet, but still within 150 feet, which is one of the furthest average distances for spellcasting, the Cerberus could still use their movement and bonus to close the gap, and then try to douse the player with a 30-foot long breath attack. In Mythology, Cerberus is a multi-headed dog with a snake for a tail, who was one of the many monstrous children of Typhon and Echidna. He was also known as the Hound of Hades because it was he who guarded the entrance to the underworld, preventing the dead from escaping their fate. While the number of heads varies in the tales, the most consistent number we find in literature is 3, but strangely enough in artworks he is usually depicted with only 2, and almost never with more than 3. His siblings include the two-headed hound Orthrus, the Chimera, and the Lernaean Hydra, and similar to his Chimera brother, he was depicted as having a flaming tongue and flaming eyes, which might indicate that he breathed fire. Cerberus was the final and most difficult of Heracles' 12 labors. He was tasked with the capture of Cerberus, a task that was thought to be completely impossible. Killing a legendary creature, while dangerous, was not an impossibility, but returning with the Hound of Hades alive. This was an impossible task meant to rid Eurystheus of Heracles forever. In most of the retellings of the 12 labors, Heracles had help from Hermes, who acts as his guide in the underworld, and Athena, who arms him. The tale describes Heracles' capture of Cerberus differently depending on the source. Some say that Heracles spoke directly to Hades and just asked him for the hound, and was told that if he beat Cerberus without weapons, he would be allowed to take the beast away. Heracles wrestles the dog and squeezes its head or heads until it submits. Some tales seem seem to describe Heracles agreeing to defeat Cerberus with no iron, using his lion skin as a shield and stones or stone arrows to weaken the beast for capture. Other tales show Heracles abiding by the no iron rule, using his giant wooden club to beat the crap out of both Hades and Cerberus. In another tale, Persephone greets Heracles in the underworld, calling him her brother as he was a demigod. She gives him the chains for Cerberus, and Heracles took what was seen as his birthright away. In almost all of the tales, regardless of the method of capture, Heracles returns to Eurystheus with Cerberus in chains. In most tales, Heracles then releases Cerberus back to Hades after showing him off, but some of them say that Cerberus escaped, fleeing back to his true home and master. In comparing the D&D creature to Cerberus from myth, we find that the description is pretty much the same, except for the lack of serpent tail. Like most of the creatures in D&D based on Greek monsters, the Greek monster is a singular entity, while the creature in D&D is a type of creature instead. Like its mythical counterpart, the Underworld Cerberus defends the portals in the underworld, ensuring that no dead souls can escape and that no mortal souls can get in. Both are fearsome guard dogs with an association with fire, and the ability to defend the underworld against all but the most powerful of adversaries. If you enjoyed that video, consider giving it a like and giving me a follow. And for more of my videos, you can find me on Twitch @Moglaroo, YouTube @Moglaroo Streams, and TikTok @Moglaroo Streams as well.